Hello everyone. Welcome to the lecture on development in the age of globalization. This lecture is a part of your paper on development communication. This module deals with the concept of development in the age of globalization. The concepts and theories of development differ among the scholars and practitioners. However, what has been observed is that the definition of development as given by the powerful West has become the most accepted and widespread definition world over, especially the third world countries. It must be noted that if the concept of development is wrongly defined and followed, it has the potential to make the world, especially the third world countries, more prone to exploitation and be underdeveloped. So before we begin the discussion on development in globalization era, we need to have a concrete idea about some key concepts like emergence of development and creation of the various worlds, and what are the significant parameters of measuring development globally. All these will be discussed in the coming up sections. Idea of emergence of development. It is quite common among many scholars that they consider the age of development to have officially started with the President's Truman 4-point speech post Second World War. However, since 1945, the concept of development has been a highly debatable one. We have had various definitions of development ranging from the colonialist definition of infrastructural development, which meant construction of physical infrastructure in the colonized country, albeit for their own benefit, as well as institutional development such as democratization, westernization, English education, etc., to the capitalist definition of trickle-down development, which implied that the benefits of capitalism would slowly trickle down to the masses, manifesting in their socio-economic development. We have also had socialist model of bottom-up development, which emphasizes on development oriented at empowering the lowest strata of the society and spiraling upwards, to neoliberal model of development, which emphasizes on free trade and restricting state interference in economic affairs. Creation of first world, second world and the third world. The concept of first world finds its origin in the categorization of those states which were in the vanguard of modernization process following industrial revolution. These first world or the advanced industrial countries AIC were the first to undergo modernization, which accompanied industrial revolution of the 18th century. The world concept of second world finds its origin as a relative connotation applied to communist states during the Cold War period of mid-20th century. After the end of Cold War and collapse of communism, the word second world has been put to disuse, and what we often hear or read are first world and third world. The first world is still used today to identify a group of states that espoused capitalism and economic liberalism. The first world was a region where economic growth led to the development of bourgeoisie and where there were demands of broadening the political participation in order to accommodate the new emerging classes. Technological advancement and scientific achievements were other few important features of such societies. However, the most unique creation of the first world value system was the emergence of multinational corporations, MNCs, which has since been the vehicle of transmission of first world's values to the rest of the world, especially the third world. We have had an idea of the first and second world, but what does the word third world imply? The word third world is actually a portmanteau term for those countries which has experienced decolonization over the last 2 centuries. It includes states in Central and South America, Asia, except Japan, Middle East, Africa and the Pacific Islands, except New Zealand and Australia. The term third world, anglicized version of French word tiers monde, was popularized in the 1950s by French writers such as Georges Ballandier and Alfred Sauvé. Georges Ballandier and Alfred Sauvé. The term third world was used in contradistinction to the first world, which stood for capitalist liberal democracy, and the second world, which stood for command economic planning. However, as said earlier, after the collapse of Soviet Russia or of communism, the term second world has been put to disuse, and the word which finds frequent mention in the media is the third world. Like first world, the third world countries too have certain characteristic features. Being recently freed from the shackles of colonialism, these countries mostly have adopted the Western model of economic development and are at developing state in the ladder of development. Since these third world countries were erstwhile colonies of Western powers, the territorial dimensions of these countries have been demarcated by colonial cartographers and political geographers. Due to this arbitrary demarcation of boundaries, many third world countries are ethnically heterogeneous. As a result, this centrifugal ethnic identity, which is strong in these countries, acts as a divisive factor inhibiting growth of centripetal state nationalism. Certain other characteristics of third world countries are low literacy level, high population growth rate, slow pace of industrialization, poor health, dependence on agriculture, low levels of per capita income, etc. Third world countries have low literacy levels, high population rate. Third world countries are also taken as synonyms with the non-aligned countries that did not join either of the power blocs. The thinkers of dependency theory define third world as those periphery countries which are connected to the world economic division created and dominated by core countries. Over the past few decades, the term third world has been used interchangeably with the least developed countries or developing countries. Measuring development at global level. Having defined first world, second world and third world countries, let us now have a look into the parameters which are used to measure development. There are various ways of measuring the progress of development, from the dominant Western concept of measuring development in terms of GDP to the concept of gross national happiness adopted by Bhutan, which focuses on spiritual well-being, to emphasizing on economic equality and inspecting Guinea sources which is used to represent the income or wealth distribution of a nation's residents. To gauge development, there are various ways and parameters through which development is measured. The UN, in its Human Development Index (HDI), uses the composite statistics of education, life expectancy and per capita income indicators to rank countries into tiers of development. Thus, a country whose citizens lead a long and healthy life, who mean years of schooling, that is years that a person aged 25 or older has spent in formal education, is high and have a good expected year in schooling, that is total expected years of schooling for children under 18 years of age, and who have a decent standard of living, which is measured in terms of gross national income per capita at purchasing power parity, is considered to be high in HDI. Accordingly, countries are ranked into 4 tiers of development: low development, medium development, high development and very high development. A more composite and compelling definition of development has been offered by noted economist Amartya Sen. According to Mr. Sen, development is about creating freedom for people and removing obstacles to greater freedom. People should be free to choose their own destiny. Efforts should be made to remove obstacles to freedom. Enhance development, which include poverty, poor governance, corruption, lack of economic opportunities, lack of education and lack of proper health. Construct of a welfare state. The concept of welfare state is one in which the government or the state plays a key role in protection and promotion of the economic and social well-being of its people. A welfare state is committed to equality such that the type and quality of services being provided by the state are not differentiated on the basis of class or sectional positioning of the citizens. It is based on the principles of equitable distribution of wealth, equality of opportunities and state responsibility of the destitute who are unable to avail for themselves the minimal provisions for a decent life. The welfare state demarcates a certain amount of funds to be used for services provided to its citizen like healthcare, education, etc., as well as directly aiding people in form of social security. This funding is through redistributionist tax, which includes larger income tax for people with higher income, known as progressive tax, and lower tax for people with lower income. This helps reduce the income gap between the rich and the poor. Idea of liberalism. The term liberal finds its genesis during the 14th century, during which it referred to a class of freemen who were neither serfs nor slaves. However, the word as of today has a wide variety of meanings associated with it. It implies being generous and empathetic in social attitudes and behavior, or it may simply imply open-mindedness. However, the term liberalism in political parlance finds its appearance much later, early part of 19th century, being first used in Spain in 1812. Within 3 decades, the term became widely recognized throughout Europe as a reference to distinctive set of political ideals. By 1830s, the Whigs started to refer themselves as liberals, and the first distinctively liberal government was formed under Gladstone in 1868. The core principle of liberal ideology is a commitment to the individual and a desire to create a society in which people are free to achieve fulfillment and satisfy their interests. This principle emphasizes that every individual should enjoy maximum possible freedom which does not violate rational humanistic consensus. Individuals should be entitled to equal political and legal rights, and that they should be rewarded at par with their talents and willingness to work. There are two principles around which liberal societies are organized: consent and constitutionalism. This is to ensure protection of the citizens from arbitrariness and tyranny of governments. Capitalism and marketization. The term capitalism implies an economic system which is dominated by private ownership of means of productions. It is a system where the state plays a minimal role in the functioning of the economy and the market forces play a dominant role. In a capitalist market economy, the owners or factors of production determine the decision making and investments, while the prices and distribution of goods are determined by competition in the market. Thus, the market plays a vital role in a capitalist economy. There might be different forms of capitalism depending upon varying degrees of free markets, rules defining private property, and government intervention and regulation. Consequently, we have free market capitalism, welfare capitalism, and state capitalism. However, most of the existing capitalist economies are mixed economies, which combine free markets with state interventions. Marketization implies introduction of competition in the public sector by means of transforming a planned economic system towards a greater market-based economy. The process might include liberalization of the economy by means of easing pricing controls, reducing regulations, and opening up of the economy for market-based allocation of resources. Marketization can also imply changes within the public sector by means of introducing market mechanism and incentives within it. It might include reforms such as outsourcing components of public provision, stimulating competition among providers of goods and services, or incentivizing entrepreneurial responsibility in the delivery of goods and services. Marketization can occur at varying degrees, from liberalizing an entire economy to introducing limited competition within a public sector. It should be noted that in marketization, the government strives to run PSUs on capitalistic model without letting off its control over the public sector, thus synthesizing the best of capitalism and socialism. The age of globalization refers to the free movement of goods, services, capital, people, technology and information across the globe. The major factors which have facilitated this global convergence has been advances in means of transport and in telecommunication infrastructure, especially internet and mobile technology. Though the time of origin of globalization has been a topic of debate among scholars, yet there is a consensus that large-scale globalization began in the late 19th and early 20th century, when the connectivity of the world economies and cultures grew very quickly. Though the advent of information and communication technology (ICT) facilitated the process of globalization, The pertinent question which arises is, what necessitated the emergence of globalization? The scholars of new liberalism opine that free market is the best mechanism to solve the economic issues and promote development. They opine that there must be a division of labor in the international market and that countries must join this international market depending upon their specialization. Thus, a country which specializes in cheap labor must be the favored destination for manufacturing, while a country which specializes in technology must focus its energies on advancement of technology and making that technology economically affordable to all. In this way, the benefits of cheap manufactured goods and cheap technology is available across the globe. Impact of globalization on third world countries. In a globalized world, development in third world countries is contingent on inflow of foreign direct investment, that is FDI, into their economies. This flow of capital is often accompanied with advanced technology which would be beneficial to the local economy. However, flow of capital and technology into any country is contingent on three factors: availability of quality human resources, which is adept in handling the new incoming technology, effective law and order situation in the host country, and good condition of physical infrastructure, wise roads, electricity, ICT, etc. Thus, in fact, globalization necessitates development of the underdeveloped or developing economies in order to attract FDI from developed economies. Globalization has emerged because development of transport and communication technology has greatly lowered the cost of circulation of goods and services across the globe. Thus, according to advocates of neoliberalism, underdeveloped countries should open up their economies, that is, liberalize their economies for free movement of goods and services across the globe. This liberalization would also aid in attracting FDI into their economies from developed countries, thereby aiding their ascent in the development ladder. Critique of free trade by revisionist school. The concept of globalization as propounded by the neoliberals is still the dominant view on globalization in the world today. The criticism propounded by revisionist school is actually a revision of the concept of globalization and not a complete rejection of it. The revisionist school neither totally opposes globalization nor does it advocate underdeveloped countries to refrain from joining international market. Its main criticism is on free market theory and offers alternative opinion about the policies and systems. There never existed development in the context of free trade. Any country that has successfully developed a capitalist economy has undergone a stage where the state has intervened and protected young industries. The initial stage of industrialization was based on domestic market and there never existed a free trade. The United States of America, Germany, Japan, as well as underdeveloped economies in East Asia followed the same path. In fact, the growth of underdeveloped countries' economies post Second World War has not been very effective. Advanced economies have been more or less been able to maintain a stable growth of per capita income. However, the income gap between the advanced economies and majority of the underdeveloped countries has widened. With the notable exception of East Asia, the differences in economic development amongst the underdeveloped countries were very great. East Asia used state intervention to support economic development. East Asian countries adopted export-oriented policies. With rapid advancement in exports, they were quick to acquire production technologies. They also implemented the policies of import substitution to aid heavy industries and high-tech industries. East Asian states monitored the strategy for industrial development, managed to regulate capital and took initiatives to promote their economic bodies. The Latin American countries or African countries were not able to replicate the East Asian model of development and they relied on MNCs. Their economies were controlled by these MNCs and their government were unable to control the fate of their economic development. No doubt, globalization opens up new avenues for economic development. It offers opportunity to underdeveloped economies to benefit from the technological advancements made by advanced economies to boost up their production so that the products could be sold in domestic as well as international market, thereby harnessing the full potential of economic development of the host country. However, as we have seen above, this inflow of capital and technology is contingent upon certain prerequisites of effective law and order situation, quality human resource and infrastructural requirements like roads, electricity, ICT, etc. It must be noted, however, that this flow of capital and technology is attached with certain strings, the control of which lies with MNCs and which shape and destine the economy of the host country. However, the example that we discussed above about the East Asian countries offers us a viable alternative to open up our economies for globalization, benefit from international flow of capital, competitive goods and services, people and technology, and at the same time protect our economies from the unwarranted control of foreign MNCs. It can be said that the East Asian model has successfully synthesized development with the ideology of growth marked by Western ethocentrism. For more details, please read the module carefully and attempt the questions given at the end of each module. Thank you.